leaked AI legislation and the future of regulation. Hi, everybody. Karen Roby here for ZDNet, talking with Greg Nichols about this specifically here today. Greg, a really significant AI regulation document was leaked in Europe just recently. So, what do we know about this?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. The European Commission is set to propose new regulations on AI and outlaw systems used for various things like indiscriminate surveillance operations, for example. And a draft of the document was leaked recently, last week, as of this recording, setting off a lot of back and forth in the AI world about whether or not the EU regulation goes far enough, what it does right, what it does wrong. And the leaked plans, they really call for a ban on specific types of AI systems, such as those that track individuals directly. And that's been a big topic of conversation recently in security circles. Those that create social credit scores, for example, which is similar to systems that exist in other countries that have been maligned by democracy advocates. As you might imagine, the topic of regulation in the US has really been kind of squarely on people's minds. So there's no question AI is here, it's coming. So the real big question then is, what have regulators done, and what can they do, and what should they absolutely not do to protect citizens and consumers, while really encouraging technological development to take its course and encouraging private industry, which is always that kind of careful balance you have to strike. So that's what I wrote about this week, and it was fun looking into it.
And Greg, how are AI experts responding to this?
Yeah, fairly consistently, I'd say, at least from what I've heard. And for insights there, I reached out to Dr. Hanayu Mahmoodian, and apologies to her for probably butchering the pronunciation of her name. But she is global AI ethicist at DataRobot, a Boston-based company that enables consumers to create and validate machine learning models using their data. So, kind of a good perch from which to shed some light on what's going on. Her take really is that practitioners appreciate the assistance the draft gives in a few respects, really clearing up ambiguity. Like many fast moving fields, legislation right now around AI is really playing catch up to a large degree. And with that, with the absence of legislation, there's been really a lot of ambiguity about defining use cases and identifying really high risk use cases for AI. And the new draft really helps to clarify and define those, including those social credit scores that I mentioned. Just one among other high risk use cases involving artificial intelligence. The as far as surprises kind of baked in that experts are talking about, and the sort of chatter that's flying back and forth right now. One probably includes the auditing requirement for AI systems, and it was, I think, unexpected. Is the tenor I'm getting, albeit not outright surprising. And really, it's not surprising because the EU has always been really serious about tech regulation and protecting its citizens from data victimization, and it's got quite a strong foundation, regulatory foundation, because of GDPR, and is expanding kind of the spiritual backbone of that regulation into artificial intelligence now. So that's kind of been the tone and tenor of the conversation among experts that I've been hearing.
All right, and Greg, we've been talking about it, there in Europe, but as far as the U.S., where does the U.S. stand when it comes to AI regulation?
Sure. Yeah. So, the US, like other regulatory bodies and governments, is really balancing a lot of different priorities and stakeholders while working toward regulation. It's a similar position for anyone who follows the consumer and commercial drone industries to regulation in those spheres. Where you have a really fast moving technology that's kind of outpaced the commercialization of which has outpaced the regulatory environment. And there have been a lot of frustrations in private industry. At the same time, kind of a lot of vocal calls among privacy advocates. So you have this real kind of brewing tension, and regulators are sort of plodding along, trying to play catch up. So Mahmoodian, she points out that Congress, it already has proposed legislation, such as the Algorithmic Accountability Act, which would move our current state more toward the EU regulations. So kind of very similar language we're seeing there. And the EU's current regulation that just leaked is considered the most robust in the world. So Mahmoodian also points out that there are institutions like the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center and National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence that have stated that AI is really needed as a security concern. While at the same time, private industry sees AI as this economic catalyst, which means that regulators are going to have to strike that balance between these two competing sides, more than two, really. It's such a dynamic issue that there's kind of voices from all sides on this. And you're finding that balance between sort of ensuring ethical, fair, and unbiased AI without stifling the innovation that really is the lifeblood of technological economy.
All right, and Greg, $1 million question here. What's at stake if we don't regulate this soon?
I put a very similar question to Mahmoodian, and she says, she thinks we need to open our minds to some regulation in the space because of the humanistic impact of these systems. And she gave an interesting example, I think that's illustrative. So, in a single company right now, a biased hiring manager, which is obviously not a good thing, while unethical, has a fairly limited impact. Limited because it's a single person in a single company. Not to say the damage for individuals in that situation can't be severe, but the impact overall is quite contained. But if you extrapolate that out to an AI system, used in the same hiring situation, it really has the potential to do harm to both the company and the applicants writ large. Beyond a single use cases, kind of replicated out in the world exponentially. And that is really scary. So it does make a lot of sense, according to Mahmoodian and a lot of the other talk that's happening right now around kind of the appraisal of the EU regulation, to take a beat and be pretty cautious about how regulators are going to deal with artificial intelligence as it rolls out kind of writ large, which it is in the process of doing right now. So, really, there is quite a bit at stake, even if we're just confining the conversation to issues like bias. And of course, there are other issues involved, like privacy, just as one example, and sort of your democratic standing in society as another. So I'd say big issues at stake for sure.
All right, Greg Nickels with ZDNet. Thanks for being with me here today. For much more on AI and the legislation and what you need to know, make sure you check out ZDNet. Thanks for watching.